Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mountainside Podcast. Our guest for this episode is Colorado native Kori Hazel. He's a writer and photographer for 303 Magazine, and he's recently covered some crazy stories during this kind of crazy time. I really enjoyed sitting down and talking to him about that. He's also heavily involved in the local music scene, and I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. Hey, salute, Kori. Thanks for coming up. I appreciate you making the journey up the hill.
Up the hill. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, how's life, man? Welcome to Evergreen, and how's life treating you these days? I know it's a little bit crazy with you're in the music industry just like I am.
Yeah.
And it can be a little bit crazy right now.
It's very different right now. It's there's a lot of ebbing and flowing and just kind of readjusting what it means to be in the music industry, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you don't have that same sort of feeling, I guess, as you would at a normal live show. Yeah. Without an audience there, or if you're trying to do something over Zoom or something like that, like we were talking before the podcast. You know, I specifically do all my recordings in person for this show. Oh, yeah. And I'm sure that we're going to step outside of that bounds at some point, but it's so much better when you're sitting in the same room.
The energy is better.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can't imagine being an up and coming band and having that struggles. If you're already set, you're probably okay. You probably can do some online stuff, but if you're a startup or something like that, it's
just not as good.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of especially for like the local area, you have so many other local bands and they all have to hit the internet now, and you're competing with the same people who have like so much more money and so much more of a fan base, and it just doesn't compete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's really hard. We a good friend of mine is actually in a band here in Denver, and they're doing pretty well, but they have their first live show coming up. Shout out to Lola Rising. I don't know if you're familiar with them, being in the Denver scene, but I think they're playing Lammer Lounge this Saturday. Yeah. So coming up.
Lammer's been doing some socially distanced situations, and I'm like, I'm been meaning to check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you know what the stipulations are there, or what they're implementing, or?
Definitely seated. You have to have I think the capacity is like 30 or 50, but they're selling it by table. And I believe they have food trucks as well outside, so it's becoming more like think of it kind of like one of those like jazz speakeasies, regardless of the band. And it's just interesting because they've also had to change a lot to adapt because they can't serve alcohol after 10, and that's such a huge
strange
component.
World, isn't it? I mean, it's an entirely different. We took a lot for granted.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, just regular life, it's like all been taken for granted. And
yeah.
I don't know, even stuff that you just like would overlook. Just at the fact that you could just walk around without a mask in public. It's a trip. Like, imagine if someone told you like this would be a couple months from now, a couple months from March, I guess, and you're just like, that reality would be hard to believe, but here we are.
Yeah, you would never believe it.
Yeah, no.
You'd be like, you're crazy.
Yeah, it's like, imagine. Wouldn't it be funny if we all were in lockdown for 3 months and then we got out and it rose again? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a strange fix. And, like going to a restaurant just isn't the same anymore. And I feel really bad for those restaurant owners and stuff like that because it's not under their control by any means, right? You can't. When there's a mandatory mask order or something like that, it's just not the same. And then every restaurant seems to be a little bit different atmosphere. So it's like if you go into one that's too relaxed, it's like, are they breaking the rules or are they,
Yeah, they're all different, even with the stipulations. Like there's this one sushi place down here, and they all are wearing like PPE and just mask, gloves, and they all transition to styrofoam and all that. Super wasteful, but another topic. But then there's others that are definitely are a lot more lax and like allow like mingling with tables as long as you're wearing masks, stuff like that, and it's weird.
Yeah, it's weird to get your food in a to-go box or like have to look on a menu on your phone is really strange to me. You know, like we do so much on our phones anyways, but like to like have to scan a QR code and then look at it. I'm so used to holding something in my hand, you know, and like
I actually don't mind the holding of the menus.
Right. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's just not the same experience, I guess, but it's all still worth it, and I think that we should all still try to support those businesses as much as we can, you know.
Yeah, they're doing the best they can under the circumstances.
So yeah, that's enough about COVID. Everybody's already had enough of that shit already. So
overkill.
But can you tell us a little bit about your background and are you a Colorado native?
Yeah, I grew up in Centennial, Colorado.
Okay.
Went to school at the University of Arizona, and then came back out to Colorado. Music kind of stepped in when architecture stepped out. That's what I went to school to major in, and I was going to also run track at the University of Arizona. But both those things didn't end up working out the way I wanted them to. So then I was like, okay, what do I love in life like the most? And it's like, it was always been music. So I'm like, let's give this an honest shot. And I didn't major in music or anything like that, but I did marketing and entrepreneurship, and I thought those both could have applications in the music world. And then, yeah, when I came back to Denver, upon graduation, trying to figure out what to do, you're a 20-something, just like, okay, I have music dreams, but like, what do I do? Especially in a place, coming back to Denver, the avenues I saw for that weren't as apparent as other huge cities like New York or LA. So I came into contact with this, a writing internship with 303 Magazine, and also took another internship at Madison House. So I was like commuting 3 different ways, from Centennial to Boulder to Denver, and then Denver back home for a good 6 months, trying to do all 3 things at once. And
burning the candle at both ends, huh?
Yeah, but it was worthwhile because like things at 303 started taking off, and I started like adding different roles onto my role. So then I became like a talent buyer on New Year's Day, because they're working on doing some festival. This is like 2018. This is 2018. January 2018. And yeah, they needed someone to step in as talent buyer for this festival they were trying to do. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have this booking experience from Madison House. And then it just kind of like built from there and snowballed. And then my position didn't exist before, the one that I currently work. And it's just all encompassing, from like creative, like as a creative strategist for certain events we do, trying to think outside the box for like immersive activations and marketing opportunities, to still writing and photography and talent buying. And it's like all under one umbrella type of situation. So that's kind of like where that all stemmed from, and artist management on my own. And yeah,
so just a lot. many hats.
But I don't mind it. I love, the more hats you can put on me, the better I think I operate. I love it. I love having a lot of different things and switching up my mindset on a whim.
Yeah. No, I have kind of a similar background. I grew up here in Colorado, and you know, I kind of fell into the music industry, I guess. I had a friend that had a band, and they got like a big gig or some place in town, or what we thought was a big gig at the time, and they were like, hey, we really need a guitar tech to make us look professional, right? So I learned how to tune a guitar real quick and help them out. And then I think it was, I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks had gone by, maybe a month. I mean, it was a short period of time. And they're like, hey, you want to manage us? And I was like, sure. So that led down a whole nother path where I started reaching out to record labels and building promo kits and all this stuff that management does.
Yeah.
Or they used to do back in the day. It's so different now. This was way before social media. I think MySpace had just hit like the...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that shit.
Oh, I do. Way different era.
Yeah.
I kind of miss those days, though.
Yeah.
I feel like there was... Without streaming, it was a lot... I don't know. You could tell who's like really talented really quickly.
You could still sell CDs at a show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you didn't have to be on Spotify or one of these big platforms or something like that.
Not a single person's doing that now.
Yeah. So, anyways, we went down that road, and then eventually things kind of fizzled out here in Denver, and I was like, okay, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do. I was bartending at the time, and I just went both feet in. I started talking to some production people and figured out how much money they were making, and went down that road and ended up touring all around the world with a bunch of different rock bands and divas and rappers, and I had a great time, and it was awesome. I got to see the world, make a lot of money, and all that. But then, as soon as my daughter was born, that changed everything, right? Because
it's one of those moments.
Yeah, it's one of those moments where you don't want to be on the back of a tour bus, you know.
With a baby.
Yeah, with a baby. Yeah. So
it's not the place.
Yeah, and your baby would be at home, and you just wouldn't see it grow up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was a bit of a game changer for me, for sure. But yeah, I'm. It all kind of came full circle. Like I said, when the kids came around, I miss what I did, but I feel better about it now because my kids are growing up here where I did, and Colorado's a great spot, right?
Yeah, it's a great place to raise a family.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's changed a lot, but it still is a great spot. We have all this public land and awesome places to get out and enjoy, especially if you're an outdoors person. My kids pretty much live outside, which is awesome. And I feel like if we lived like in Dallas or even LA or something like that, you're just kind of a little bit more locked in your own bubble, and you're not as aware of what's around you. You kind of only know what you need to know.
Yeah, you don't get a full appreciation of like what the outside can actually do for you, in a way that's like not like not using the land, but just like really understanding like what growing up with like these resources is like. And it's just, I loved it. Like hikes, we do all these nature camps and whatnot, and it's Denver, like Colorado in general, just teaches you so much about how important those things are.
Yeah, even the public schools have like day camps, or even sometimes you go for like a week, right? To some of like the camps, and they teach you like archery or fishing or canoeing or whatever it is.
They'll teach you how to gold mine, like
right. Yeah, we have some odd field trips here, that's for sure. Like we're gonna go gold panning for the day, right? Yeah, kind of a crazy world. So how did you? What really spurred you into that media and music? Did you just kind of fall into it, or did you have a passion for it? Because
I had a passion for it. Like I was one of those kids that just grew up reading Rolling Stone magazine. I was like, this would be so cool. I did fall into the writing bit though. I had this random this freak opportunity, and back when I was in high school, to write for the New York Times. They came by our school, and we're the only school in the nation they did it for that segment. It was about blogging about your college admittance process, and there's only 6 seniors in high school in the entire country, all from our high school, and I was one of them. And it was just wild to have that platform and just to basically talk about yourself and like what you're going through, and then have people across the world be like, just like to chime in and voice their whatever they have to say about your process, because everyone can relate to that. Especially if you have kids, or if you're a kid yourself that's going off to that next stage. That was wild. But then,
so they actually published what you wrote, then, huh? Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they ran it. It was this.
Was that like a lottery process or something, or was it like a contest, or did they publish every kid's? I mean, I'm sure that they can publish every kid's deal. So
no, it's just the 6. Like they had, it was like something you had to apply for.
Okay.
And I did it, and I forgot that, like, I did it, and I just didn't think anything of it again until they were like, oh, yeah, you've been selected. And I even forgot the photo shoot was happening, because they have to put your whole headshot on the page, and I just look like a bum in it, and I'm just like, I was completely not ready for any of that. But, yeah, it was a great stepping stone, because then it, like, let me write for 303. They initially worried that I'd be overqualified, and I'm like, it's just a wild thing that happened.
Right.
And then, when it was like a music staff writer job, I'm like, oh yeah, I love music, and I can write to the tune of anything, so it's a no-brainer for me to do this. And I was just looking for a job, even like a stepping stone to get into music. And I'm like, this is great. I know I can write. This is something like I know I can do without having, you know how you have to have like so much experience in the music industry to do this and this. But like writing for me was like kind of my doorway in, and it ended up being something completely different. It ended up being more of a career than just like a stepping stone. And I had no clue that was what was going to happen going into that.
That's pretty awesome, man. It's funny how stuff works out like that. You know, it just kind of, sometimes you just make your own path, or you're making your own path and you don't even know you're doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of part of my career, is just kind of falling into the right places at the right time, and almost like it was meant to be, you know?
Yeah. So, it's kind of like people go in airstreams and like, no matter what you do, you're going to like end up where you're supposed to end up. It's weird. It's wild. Because looking back on all that, it was like kind of set it up for this, and then everything else I did set it up for the next thing, and then end up here. Not to say it wasn't like hard work, but
it's
just
like building blocks, right? Like,
yeah.
'cause even me working in like a construction background or something like that led to me understanding how to move large pieces of equipment through concrete floors, you know, to build Rihanna's stage or whoever's, you know, shit like that. So yeah, it's kind of funny how all that just kind of all plays together. So I think no matter where people are at, they kind of get caught up in like, oh, my life sucks, or this isn't good enough. And it's like, if you just focus on, instead of really focusing on the goal, maybe you focus on the journey a bit more. It'll probably make you better once you achieve that goal.
I think goals should be loose in general. Like, you shouldn't have, I was talking about this on like my friend's podcast, and it's about just not focusing directly on what, like, a specific title. Like, titles don't matter. Like, the title you're probably going for doesn't even exist.
Right.
So if you just like are chasing titles, or chasing like what you think you need, instead of like what drives you in general, like music or like putting on a podcast, that's like chasing something that is more of a topic. It's more of a, I don't know, it's just less constrictive.
You kind of need to let it evolve.
Yeah, you need to let it go where it needs to go, because it's going to become what it's going to become, but you have to like be open to letting it become something that you don't even know what it's going to be.
Right.
Yeah. And like this,
that's already happened with this podcast.
Yeah.
Like, originally we put it all together pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So I had all the guests lined up for like the first 12 episodes, and then here comes COVID-19, and just it changed everything, because
it really does.
A lot of the people that were going to come on worked for government agencies, or, you know, were part of certain rescue organizations or stuff like that, and they were just like, with our guidelines, I'm sorry, we can't do it, and I wasn't willing to do it remote, so whatever. But now we got guests like you, and it's all worked out, man. We're doing well, so I'm super excited about it all. But I don't want it to sound like it's not what it was meant to be, because it is totally, like, it's fine the way it is. I'm just letting it kind of grow organically into what it's going to be, you know? Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think.
No, I think it's like, it's the free, like, I think everyone should give like the dreams or like whatever they have going on for them some freedom, and like the ability to move and adapt if it needs to, and even just take some chances. I think that's what makes it grow in the first place, like anything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get caught in that scared bubble, too. Mm-hmm. And I've had nerves on the very first podcast I recorded, I was like, not like I had butterflies so bad I was going to throw up or something, but I was nervous, man. I'm not going to lie, you know. I'd never done it before, and
it's real. Even
though it's not recorded live or anything, I wanted it to just do well, you know.
Yeah.
But same thing, like my first big music gig, or you know, the first time I tuned that guitar and had to hand it off to a friend of mine, you know.
Oh my God, that's right.
I was nervous then, you know. So it's all good, man. I think it's just, you got to just push through those, you know. If anybody out there is listening that is too scared to go try their goals, just get out there and do it, man. If you screw up, it's a learning lesson, you know. Like, forget about it. Other people will forget about it later, you know what I mean? Unless you're the president or something, you know.
True.
You got a lot of eyes on you, but yeah.
Always.
So, I'm sorry. You do a lot of stuff at 303 Magazine then. Yeah. What do you cover photography-wise? Is everything, Or when you go to like, are you a music critic or what would your title be? Not to title you, but
It's definitely staff writer for what I write, and it's staff music writer. So it's everything from reviews to profiles and profiles on musicians, and even just covering the local music scene's news. That's all kind of under that hat. Photography wise, it's anything and everything that may come under my umbrella, or things I'm interested in. Like it can be photographing a restaurant. That's the best. You can get some food out of it.
yeah.
Definitely the musicians. I love doing people. I love photographing people in like moments. Capturing some of the protests were some of my favorite things I've done for the magazine and some of my most impactful work, I think.
That's actually how I found you, and I wanted to ask you about some of that because I wasn't down there at all.
Yeah.
But I really liked your photos
Thank you.
that you put out, and I thought the article was well written too that went along with it, and I feel like it was very neutral.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people right now with that whole subject are either on one side or the other,
Yeah.
right? And I think even your photos were very on the neutral side of I mean, you didn't depict anything that was horrible or graphic or anything like that is what I'm getting at.
The things I wanted to capture were just kind of like the human aspects, like the emotions involved with it. So you understood, like, if you don't understand what's happening, that you could at least try to learn and understand, like, why this person looks like this. Like, why is this person crying in this photo? Like, why does this person look defeated holding this sign up? Like, it's the last thing they have going for them in terms of, like, it's like the final straw of, like, enough is enough. And, like, I've done this. I've seen my, like, parents do this. I don't want my children to do this. And I think that's what I wanted to capture in those photos. Like, I don't think it's something that needs two sides in terms of understanding how it's affected generations of people and how it's affected lives. It's not one of those things, in my opinion, that is I don't think there's much of debate in terms of like how people have suffered and how you could go to those rallies and see so many faces that look like yours and so many emotions. Like, people were crying in some of the audiences, like especially like the vigils and those moments of just togetherness. There's definitely anger, and you can enact your anger in different ways, but that's all stems from the same emotion of like, I'm sick and tired of this being the status quo. And I think people do need to understand, like, what is this status quo that people are sick and tired of. It's not a question of whether it exists or not, because those pictures.
Oh, it's there for sure. Yeah.
And it's there. It exists. And that's what people need to focus on. It's like, why is this that? Why is this the truth? Like, why is this happening? And stop taking it out on, like, okay, someone took their anger out on the building. Okay, this person was shouting on Instagram. This person, because people show their anger in different ways, but like, why? Like, they need to focus on why they're angry. Why are they emotional? Why are they sad? Why are
you need
so
to be
many?
Logical about it too, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a certain way to do things.
Yeah.
But then you also, it's unfortunate because you have these assholes that go down there that just want to wreak havoc.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There were definitely some anarchists there, and like,
Yeah.
you could 100% tell who they were. And there's just like, they just miss the message and like miss what is happening. I don't know. But then you can also say the same thing about people that, on the converse side, it's like, there's the people that have more outrage over a Target that gets burned down versus the lives lost. And like,
yeah.
the funny thing is, like, it's not funny. It's not funny at all. But like, the whole thing is like against police brutality and like for accountability in changing how we police our communities. And you have this man who is a white man in Phoenix, Arizona, who got gunned down unjustly too. They didn't announce themselves. He had a gun behind his back because if you don't announce yourself, it's like, okay, I'm going to protect my house. That's what the Second Amendment is for. Okay. That's what you should be. you can't be. That is what it's about too. Just as much, black people get killed more. But it's saying, like, if these lives don't matter, and if you don't feel the anger for how many lives are being lost this way, then your life won't matter. If you are, like, of the majority race, then it's like, you won't matter either. And it's a fine line. Because if they're not held accountable for this black life, what takes them away from towing the line and not being accountable for this white life they took unjustly?
I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, it's like a fine line. And it's like, something needs to change. And it's just how the system protects people that shouldn't be protected. And that's the biggest part of it. And if it takes marching through the streets and being angry to get people to notice and, like, take this seriously as, like, a thing that they need to change, then, like, so be it. Because, like, something has to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100% on that. I mean, I feel like everything that you said, it really is just, that drives it home, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we could do some things a little bit better on the police side of stuff, too, when it comes to training.
Yeah.
And maybe some salaries. And maybe, these guys don't get very much training at all.
No.
And then they're put in the worst situations every day.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're humans, They're going to make mistakes. They're going to crack under pressure. Yeah. And not everybody's a good guy, right? I mean, so just because you wear a badge or something like that doesn't make you a good or a bad person, I don't think,
That's one thing that I feel like a very American thing, is believing that someone with a badge, or even like someone just belonging to the military in general, has to be a good person. And it's just like this heroism when it's like, some people are doing their job and they're expected to do their job, and you can be a hero too, but they're not mutually exclusive. Like, you're not automatically a hero by being a police officer. You're not automatically a hero by being in the military. You have to prove yourself a hero. And I feel like putting people on a pedestal like that when they haven't done anything heroic or even good. Some people have never done good in their jobs, and there's some people that just do, like, terrible things in the job that they have the power to do better. And it's just like, how are they a hero?
I think that's all facets of work and even life, right? Like, even if you're living a street life, there are worse people than the everyday citizen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
there's, like, it's in every single type of industry. There's, like, the good people and there's bad people that have, like, bad intentions.
And we have this false sense of safety, too, that when you... Well, I was always taught growing up, like, if you get pulled over or whatever, you're supposed to respect a police officer, you know what I mean? That was just what I was taught to do.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe a little bit of that comes with just the badge, and you just assume that they are a good person and they're doing what they're supposed to. And I would say that probably 85% to 90% of them are.
Yeah. I think it's not like a bad...
it's that 10% or that 1% or whatever percentage it is that's screwing it up for everybody
else. It can be a small percentage. However, if a system protects them as a whole, then it's like you can't differentiate the good and the bad guys anymore. You can't be like, he's a bad cop, let's get him out, when it's just like they will go out of their way to protect the bad cop, knowingly he's bad. Because there's some people that have rap sheets of like repeated transgressions, and those people are the same people that these accidents happen when they kill a life, to take a life that was not justified, or they keep making mistakes or using too much force and never being held accountable for doing that or acting in that way. And if they're never held that way, how do you expect it to change, or how do you expect public opinion to change? Because I'm like, law and order is needed in society, and it's always going to be needed. Like, people do break the law. People do rob banks.
Yep.
This is a bad members of society. However, those people are held accountable. And it's like, you have to hold people accountable.
I agree. So I think that kind of, that's what I was trying to get out earlier, is they need to be better vetted and they need to be better managed. Yeah. It just needs to be managed better. They need better training. They need to be able to recognize when they're losing their own cool, or they need to have, somebody else step in and take over, or whatever that needs to be,
And it could also, another answer is just like taking away some of the things they're responsible for. Like, should they be there for homeless sweeps? Should crisis counselors be there? Like, who should be on all these calls? It's like, do you need a police officer for, I don't know, like a car accident? Or do you need like for various things? Like, maybe if they have a school shooter, you're probably going to want police officers there. But if you need, like, say there's like I don't know, there's someone that's too drunk, or like someone that's just like, I don't know, homeless and just doing too much.
So you're saying like a different level of policing maybe, or something?
Well, it's like you can't, having police be responsible for everything also doesn't help.
Yeah.
It's like you call the police for anything that's wrong.
And they're always the first one at a fire or a car accident or something, because they're always on standby. They're always in that heightened alert.
Yeah.
And it's like, imagine if you were sitting on the street corner and you had to live on that street corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're in a bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you're expected to protect that street corner.
Yeah.
You're going to have a heightened sense of awareness, right?
Yeah.
So then if somebody's just fucking with you for just a minute and just comes up behind you and goes bang or whatever, you're going to jump. You know what I mean? You're going to have a different, because you're responsible for that. So I get what you're saying there, like maybe it needs to be a little bit dialed back, or maybe some needs to be taken off of their plates.
And you could also have other agencies respond to certain things. I did a terrible job at putting out examples, but there are other, policing as it currently stands involves so many different failures of society that they have to keep track of. Not failures of society, but just like so many wrongs that happen. And
they're always seeing the worst, not always the worst case scenario, but they are always seeing the worst in people, right? Because they are coming into a crisis, whether it's domestic violence, a car accident, a homicide, and then it just goes on and on from there, right?
But there's also
child
things.
abuse,
It's just like small things are just like, what is this? Like, I don't know. Just
right.
There's different things that police are called for that don't need the actual police there. Like a welfare check, or like you have a suspicion of, like, I don't know, something's too loud or whatnot. Like,
sure, like a noise ordinance or something.
It's like, do you need a full squad car to roll up here? I don't know. That's like, I don't think you could have a completely different agency that's like non-violent, or knows not to, or isn't even like, or
unarmed. How about that? That would be a good start, right? Because then you're looking at eye to eye, right?
Yeah, for things like that. It's like unarmed, like, that'd be awesome.
Right.
Perfectly awesome.
I mean, I'll be straight up honest with you. Like, I know police officers. I'm friends with some of them, and they're all good people. But when there is a person in a badge and a uniform, or even a military uniform, I'm uneasy around them.
Yeah.
Like, I feel a little bit lesser.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because I know that they have that power and that authority.
It's like, it's definitely a power thing, and it's just like, some people choose to use that power against people, or just like they shouldn't be. They use their own prejudices to fuel that power, or as a fuel for that power, and it's just, it can get into some situations that are just detrimental to society in general, and we have to ask ourselves, like, how we got here, and like how other people do things in countries where you don't have the same situations happening, because there's other ways. There's certainly other ways. They have police officers in other countries that don't have the same situations that we do. And it's like, how is this? What's different? What's vastly different? You still have people committing crimes. You still have people that are violent. You still have people doing domestic violence. It's not a U.S. thing.
Right.
But it's like, there's different ways to handle it. There's different roles that can be taken on by other people.
I agree with you, man. Yeah. That's a really good point. I think that that's a valid thing that could maybe free up some stress from our everyday people that are cleaning up the streets or whatever they're doing out there,
Yeah.
So I don't really want to thrive on that too much, but I really wanted to get your opinion and kind of, since you were there firsthand and shooting it. And like, sometimes I'm a photographer too. I love to get my camera out as one of my favorite things to do. I do a lot more landscape and wildlife photography and stuff like that. But I've shot for magazines. I've shot bands, and I've covered some stuff for press. And it's all fun to shoot. It's great to have a subject to shoot. But what is your favorite thing to cover? Is it music or your favorite subject to shoot?
It's definitely just people. You can, if I'm doing a profile on someone, I really like to have their words first and then find a place that reflects them the best. If I'm doing something that's not pre-planned, I really try to figure out, like I look around, I just observe whatever is happening. It could be moments of joy. It could be moments of just like anger, sadness. Like on my Instagram, I did two kind of like back-to-back things. One was the protests, and that had its own emotions of like anger, sadness, frustration. And then I had another one from the like Juneteenth parade, and you see this black joy that's reflected, almost like paralleled, and it's just like that's the moments I really like. It's like finding those people as well, and finding them candidly.
Can you explain what the Juneteenth parade was?
It's basically commemorates when, slaves were told in Texas like they were the last ones to know that they had been freed. And that's kind of to commemorate the end of slavery to all black people, even the ones that had to still be a slave for 2 years, even after the oh God, I'm gonna stumble a bit over.
It's all good, and I don't have Jeremy here either to fact check us. So he's actually in DC right now doing some gig or something. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's basically commemorates the end of slavery, and it's a celebration. It's very much kind of like the 4th of July for black people who have have roots that their grandparents, their like great grandparents were slaves. It's like, and you just see these girls dancing, and like I love that photo because
I love that photo too. I saw that on your Instagram page as well, and I just thought it was a perfect capture of the emotions.
Yeah,
and it was joyful. There was no sadness. There was no like protest type vibe.
Yeah.
Even though it is a demonstration, it was just a positive thing.
Yeah, and like the thing about the protest is like both things can exist, and that's like I think those are. As a photographer, I think those are two of like my favorite photos I've ever taken. It's just like the line of people in frustration and the line of people in joy, and they can exist simultaneously, and it's just like those things are impactful to me to actually capture those and like share it with other people, so you can see like a full spectrum. Like a picture says 1,000 words.
You're freezing a moment of time.
Yeah,
in my opinion, and that's what I love about it.
It's fantastic. Yeah, and it's like I don't have to add a comment or anything. You can make your own comments. You can like understand it as you want. Like you don't have to read through the lines. It's all there.
Yeah.
It's like there's no spin on this photo.
One of my favorite things to shoot was I was lucky enough to shoot some sports. I shot a lot of high school football for some local papers, and then I did professional boxing.
Yeah.
And that was just so awesome to get to capture those steel shots of, I hate to say it, somebody getting punched in the face and like the sweat and blood like spraying off of them, and just like modern day gladiator type stuff. It's really cool and it happens so fast you can't capture that with your eye, and like some of the detail, I don't know what you shoot with, and I want to get into that here in a minute, but some of the detail that you can pick up with a camera, like you can zoom in and like you can see the reflection. If you have a good enough camera and a good enough lens, you can see the reflection of what that person is seeing in their eye.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
It's amazing. I should also say I love concert photography. That's kind of where it all started.
Yeah,
because you can capture these moments on stage that are just beautiful, and it just adds a whole nother element. So that's how that all started, because I wasn't I didn't start as a photographer just to like take pictures. I was frustrated because I didn't have pictures to go along with the articles, like the reviews I'd write. So I'm just like, because a photographer wouldn't always be available, or they wouldn't be interested in the band I'm doing. So I'm just like, basically, fuck it. I'm just gonna buy this camera and do it myself and like teach myself how to do it. And then there was other applications I like kind of applied myself to. I'm like, oh, but yeah, it kind of. I'll say one of the most impactful series I ever saw for like film is like it was definitely I think it was Nat Geo Photos of the Year.
Okay.
Or Time Magazine. It's one of the two. But it followed this boy that had cancer and his mom, and like up until he died, and they're just photos, but they tell such a story and emotion behind how like the good days and the bad days. Like you see him like with a cape in a wheelchair, and his mom's like pushing him around the hallways. It's all in black and white, and you see like also moments where like the mom's in bed with her, like basically saying goodbye to her child. And it's like it's a whole spectrum.
What a horrible thing to go through, man. I mean,
it's
especially if it's one of your children. Do you have kids? Or
I do not.
Yeah,
but it was like
it's hard to explain the feeling that you have, or like the fear that you have sometimes just when you have children. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that you'll cross that bridge someday, but
eventually.
But yeah, man, it is. It's a whole nother level. So I couldn't imagine having something detrimentally wrong with them.
Yeah.
To the capacity of taking their life would just be.
It's
heartbreaking.
I can't even imagine like being just sitting in that hospital and like having like coming every day and just like taking more shots and just like experiencing this as a third person.
As a photojournalist, that would be
it's like a fly in the wall, basically.
One, yeah.
But I think it's all storytelling in a way, and you like you can tell a lot with like photos and like how people emote, and especially when they're not looking, like
right.
When people aren't paying attention, you can.
Well, we do that in conversation with body language and hand movement and just all that sort of stuff. You know, it's like you sometimes just listening to something isn't really the best way to take it in. You know what I mean? Like and I can imagine you being a writer, then you're capturing and a photographer at the same time. You're capturing exactly what you want to write about. Or maybe your photos influence like how you write about it. Because sometimes I've taken photos and I go back and I'm like, wow, I never really saw it from this perspective. Yeah. Or, you know what I mean? You really are freezing that moment.
Sometimes they do influence each other. And I love having that 360 angle where I can just like tell this story in written word and in photos. Like those are some of my favorite articles to write. And then like it's a profile, I can get that essence and I can like describe it and I can like they can see it coming out in these photos and like
That's all good stuff, man. So what's your camera rig? Are you shooting mirrorless these days? Or I mean, I know everybody's making that jump and I haven't yet because I'm just so invested on the other side of the DSLRs and all that.
This is going to be embarrassing, but like it's still basically a starter camera. It's like a D3400.
Yeah.
And with like my concert lens. But I'm like, I'm going to use the tools at my disposal until I can afford something else.
Sure.
To do it. And like, it works. And like,
there's nothing wrong with that. I know a professional photographer that took a really, really famous shot. It was of Miley Cyrus. And when I was first getting into
Terry Richardson?
Yeah. When I was first getting into photography, being on gigs, and I happened to be on a gig that he was on that he was shooting, and I started talking to him. I said, I'm getting into photography, and I feel like some of my equipment's pretty inferior, and like it's just not. I don't have these big lenses like you guys have, and these huge, DSLRs that cost $7,000 just for the camera body, and then you have a $30,000 lens attached to that. So you're holding $50,000 in your hand, right?
Expensive.
Yeah, that stuff is not cheap, and the way that it turns over too, like the way that technology goes and all that sort of stuff. And I think you can kind of get caught up in that. And he was straight up with me. He was really cool. He's like, you shouldn't worry about any of that shit. Mm-hmm. He's like, a good photo is a good photo.
Yeah.
He's like, I made $1 million off of a photo I took with my iPhone.
Yeah. No, that's what.
And iPhones are amazing. Like the camera capabilities that they have on them now are unbelievable. And some of the post editing that you can do, it's almost to the level of Lightroom in a sense. It's not quite there, but
You can
for your
download
everyday average
Lightroom on your
Joe.
phone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome. I mean, the phones are incredible, and it's always in your pocket too.
Mm-hmm. You always have it on you.
Yeah.
Like one of the photos of the year, like in the last 2 years, was a photo taken on an iPhone. It was just like, I think it was like a protest in a foreign country, and it was just like this person just whipped out their phone and took this photo, and it just racked up these accolades, and it was a fantastic photo. So it wasn't like just some trash that it wasn't just like a selfie, but it was just like, it was so cool to see that anyone can do it. I think it's like just the eye you have more than the device that you're using, because I know Terry Richardson is definitely problematic. But like, I've been very influenced by how clean his style is, and just like how he'll use disposable cameras to capture these very iconic pictures of these celebrities in a way that no one else really does. They're very like exposed, and they just have their own,
And I think that one reason why you might get that is you don't have this huge camera in their face. That's intimidating too. You know what I mean? Like if you've ever had to get your photo taken professionally, or like a headshot or anything like that, it is not a comfortable situation to have that huge lens in your face, or a big old light or something like that. So it's crazy too how Polaroids have kind of come back. Like there was a guy from the 70s that had some Polaroids of like Jim Morrison or something.
Yeah.
And he was selling them for like, I think it was $1 million a piece or something.
Jesus Christ.
Because a Polaroid is one of a kind.
Yeah.
So now there's all these Polaroid artists that are out there, which are really cool because, there's only one of those photos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not going to recreate that. Suppose you could somehow digitally recreate it, but to have the actual Polaroid that you're like fanning,
Yeah, I love that. And you just take one, and
Yeah.
There's the guy who did you've seen the Frank Ocean blonde photo.
Yeah.
The album art to that. That guy, I'm forgetting his name right now, but he uses basically a really entry level DSLR on same settings, but he is such a great photographer that his stuff is heralded, and it racks up so much money because he has just the eye. And it doesn't even matter what he's really shooting on. All the technicalities are just kind of, it's just fluff. It's just like
You're
extra.
absolutely right. And that just gave me, a lot of it is confidence too.
Yeah.
Like putting yourself in that moment and getting where you need to be and anticipating what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? So it's all about composition. It really doesn't matter about camera quality unless you're trying to put it on a billboard, which nobody is doing these days. Billboards are fucking old news. It's all internet-based marketing these days,
And also you just need to know like what you're trying to get.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to get out of it. Like, you probably know where you're going to be, and you know what you're trying to get if you're doing some street photography or stuff. Like, there's even a guy on Vogue who just have like a digital camera, and he would just go through New York and just like snap up at people, and he's a great street style photographer. Just that's his thing. Just like weaving through crowds and nothing fancy there. And I don't know.
It's kind of crazy too because I compare it to tattoos. I feel like nobody should go get a tattoo concerned about what anybody else is going to think about it, right?
Yeah.
And photography is kind of the same way.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't matter. Like, I hate it when a friend of mine gets a tattoo and they're like, "Oh, what do you think?" It shouldn't matter what I think.
Yeah.
You know
just
what
be
I mean?
happy with what you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should be the one that loves it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And if I think it's cool, that's a bonus. But I feel like photography is very much the same way. It's kind of like you have to put your own spin, your own style on it, your own composition, your own storytelling. And sometimes you can paint a picture that's not even really the facts, right?
Yeah. There's this like quote about learning the rules, and then learning when you learn the rules and when you learn how to break them is when you're ready. And it's just like you can break every rule in photography. I mean, there's like the whole thing about composition, because like you can compose a photo well, but you basically the only thing you have to really learn is just by looking at what makes a good photo, and then discerning for yourself, like, are these good for me, or like, are they good, are they bad?
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes in the post too. I also took a photography class one time from an amazing photographer, and what he did is he made us go old school with it, right? And I started photography in high school, so I started shooting on film, like 35 millimeter, like to wind it, and then we would go in the dark room and actually like develop the photos and all that stuff. And there was a whole other art to that.
Yeah.
Like you could get crazy, and that's something that's way gone now. I mean, there are some retro photographers out there, I think, that still do that sort of stuff, you know, and
Totally.
like it's kind of their spin. But you know, that because he only had 36 or 37 shots, whatever it was, you know, you really had to pay attention to what you were doing and how you were framing it. And you couldn't go back and see what you did until you were in a Lightroom and it was in one of those baths where it actually came to life, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, wow, this is a great photo, or this is garbage. And I just wasted paper and all this shit, right? So the photography class that I went to, it was a DSLR class, but he made us cover up all of our instruments. So all you could watch were your settings, right?
Yeah.
If you were in a manual mode. So your aperture, your ISO, all those sort of settings, and just try to figure it out from there.
Yeah.
And then you could only take 37 shots.
Oh, interesting.
So it was like a roll of film, and you had to tell your story or whatever it was in those 37 shots. So it made you really focus on, okay, composition. Do I want to take this photo? Because I feel like with a DSLR, like I hear it all the time at concerts and especially wildlife photographers that I'm around. Like I'm around some super professionals, but they're just out there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry on the mic to do that, but they're just out there just letting them rip, right?
Yeah.
And I'm more of like a wait for the moment, you know.
Yeah. And you know when it's coming.
Yeah, and that's just my style, and there's nothing wrong with that style, but I hate post-editing. I hate going through 5,000 photos. Like when I used to shoot bands.
Yeah.
I never shot with that rapid shutter speed, but I can imagine what it would be like to go through post if you're shooting that way. And like I was lucky enough to shoot the Deftones a couple times and some pretty big bands, you know, and had a great time doing it. But even that, like a 2-hour concert, I'm walking out of there with like probably 1,200 photos.
Yeah.
And then I would narrow that down, and then their team would narrow it down to what they wanted, you know.
Yeah.
But I just kind of went through and cleaned up the trash, and I didn't have to do much post. They did all the post-production stuff on it. But yeah, it was there's definitely some old school habits and stuff that I think that can come into play with the DSLR that a lot of people don't use these days, or it's
a fun time.
They're just shoot happy, you know.
Yeah. People can be definitely shoot happy.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that too. If that's how you capture your photos, or you narrow it down and you want to spend that time behind a computer, go for it, you know. But I like taking the photos.
Well, when I was taking that picture of the girls spread out, like they're not going to stop for me. So I'm like backing up, and I'm just like.
So did you run out in the street and like lay down? Because it's like a low perspective.
I got to the street and I was like crouching and just like moving backwards, which was super hard on the knees.
Yeah.
I was like, I only have a couple shots to get this like the way I want to. The area was clear. I'm like, this is the time to do this. And yeah, it's just me backing up and just trying to be out the way and just so I didn't get run down by these girls and like or interrupt. Because you never want to be, as a photographer.
You don't want to be in the way.
Yeah, you don't want to be something that derails something. Like, whoa, that's.
Oh man, I've seen so many photographers eat it too, like fall off of a stage or or just be in the wrong spot and get hit by a guitar or whatever's going on, you know.
I was at this one concert with Khruangbin. It was in December of 2018, I think. And these girls had somehow gotten access to the pit, and they were just like on their digital cameras, and they were just like, they had no rapport for what was going on, and they're just like in the way. They're just like doing the most, like they're standing up and getting in people's faces away, and and getting in other photographers' way, and then it was a mess. And they broke every single rule in a bad way.
Yeah. You don't want to be that guy. That's for sure. And that's the reason why there are professionals that go and shoot that shit.
Absolutely.
So can we dive into the Colorado music scene a little bit? I mean, in the time that I was here, there was quite a few bands that broke out of Denver and then have had a ton of success. And I feel like Colorado scene is a little bit different from anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
Just because we have kind of that outdoor vibe-ish type
Mm-hmm.
People are just different here. A lot of people come here to experience a good time.
Yeah. I have some hot takes on the Denver music scene.
Yeah?
I enjoy it thoroughly, and there's very, very talented people. Did you have like a specific question or like?
No. We'll get into it, but I wanted to get your take on it because you're totally immersed in it now, and I'm kind of. But.
That's cool. I think the production side is a little bit on the better end of the stick out here. But it's very much Denver's music scene is very much ruled by the music promoters in this battle of like AEG versus Live Nation, and it really kind of erodes the scene because you don't have a lot of independent guys or like a lot of focus on local bands really getting the shots they need to get better. I think it's something we've definitely lost along the way. Like we had the heyday of like the Flowbots coming up, the Fray, One Republic, and they all kind of came up around the same time. And then there was like a couple years of like drought, as I would call it, where nothing really of substance was coming out of Denver. And then now I think we're kind of having a renaissance. Like I've never seen more talented bands doing so many different things than currently. It's a shame that COVID is happening now, but I think it's going to take a lot of people to like reevaluate their sound and like really hone into it and do different things. But I think we're better off now than we have been in years. But with that whole monopoly they have over the music scene, it creates a really weird dynamic that a lot of other cities do not have in the same capacity. Like even the smaller venues like the Larimer Lounge is like 200 cap places that a lot of locals play. It's like a feeder venue for AEG because like Scott Campbell owns all of them that are like upset, like all the really major ones like Larimer, Globe Hall, and Lost Lake. So all those feeder venues are owned by AEG, but in a way that's just like, in a way that it's a basic monopoly. The whole feeder system into the bigger theaters is kind of a monopoly, and it's kind of weird that it's like that. And I wish it wasn't, because I feel like you really take a lot out of the scene. You make it feel less local. It becomes more of the national vibe. You just have you have great people coming through here, but it's like if you have as many great people coming through here, you have to have some people coming out of here, and you have to like support that.
Right.
And it's, as someone that's a promoter, you have a duty. You have a duty to help lift the scene. And I feel like a lot of these people do not do that. So that's my hot take on that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. It's good to hear. I think that it was kind of even like that when the Fray and Flowbots and some of those bands, because that's actually when I was involved with it, was right around that. We were doing gigs with all of those bands, and it was awesome. I mean, we had a great time, but even then it was just a little bit stifled, by some of that, I think. And it was hard to get notoriety. It's hard to get notoriety that way or get in front of other people.
Yeah.
But I really love Colorado music. I think it has a ton to offer. I think there's a lot of really talented people here. And who do you think is kind of the hot ticket right now? If there was a band that was going to break out of here?
There's a couple. I manage two bands, Vinyl and Oxide Daisy. I think they both have really awesome sounds. Oxide has this very Cocteau Twins vibe that's very unique and has this throwback appeal that I don't hear too much among like a lot of bands that are coming out. And I think it's like really cool that they're doing that. Another one is like Ramachandra. They have this jazz, hip hop, like I call it just cosmic jazz. Drummer is like unbelievable.
Awesome.
Switches like tempos on a dime, just like does a completely off kilter type of drumming. And the lead singer is a harpist. And some songs they don't even have like music or like lyrics at all. It's like you're going down an anime shoot. I don't know. It's
really?
Like a trip. And there's like Neoma, who's from Ecuador. I think it's Ecuador. Yeah.
That's kind of weird because a lot of the bands that I know here that have come out of here, they're not necessarily from Denver. It's just kind of a melting pot, right?
Yeah. I wish not to get away from like that per se, but some are. I mean, like most of them are from here now. Like I think the Lumineers kind of like took that opportunity to be like, okay, we can do this, and went to Denver, and then they blew up in Denver, even though they weren't from here.
Right.
Which is like, okay, cool, but I don't think they really give it back as much as like we put them on that platform. It hasn't been really given
reciprocal
back.
Yeah,
Nathaniel Rateliff does a great job. He's from here. He does like, he's been around the block. He still pays back. He's like performing at the governor's inaugurations. He's there for openings of things, having the holiday concerts like he's always done, and very much hometown pride and playing Red Rocks and all that. But
what a great venue, by the way.
I miss it.
Yeah.
It's not a summer. It's not a summer without Red Rocks, and now it's been that's probably to talk on COVID again. Like that is
right. It's hard not to talk
me.
on it, you know. So, but yeah, that especially for us too, because it's a 20-minute ride down the hill, and you're there, and there's so many great bands that go through there. It's just it's a magical place, man.
Yeah.
If nobody's ever seen a concert there, I'd highly recommend it. It should be on your bucket list for sure.
There's nothing quite like it. Like, I would take even the most inclement weather shows over not having a show at all.
Yeah.
Because, it's just rough. It just feels like you can't... It just doesn't feel like summer if you have, like, no Red Rock shows. You know?
And even, like, the Film on the Rocks, anything there is really good, you know?
Yeah, and it's, like, the atmosphere and people just, like, all together, just, like, chatting. And you can meet so many people there. Pre-game in the parking lot.
Yeah.
It's, like, just, like, a classic Colorado tradition. If there's any, like, classically Colorado things... It's spending a couple days in summer at Red Rocks at a show, or hiking, or just like doing something around that venue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it really is. And there's a ton of festivals that have popped up too that's a shame now too, you know, that like there's so many festivals that were happening in Colorado, and a lot of those have been put to bed for the summer, you know?
Yeah. Denver's a weird place for festivals, to be completely honest. A lot of them don't fare well because we have Red Rocks, and it's like, they treat it like, oh yeah, Red Rocks is our destination venue. One of them that I think is doing an amazing job is like the Underground Music Showcase that takes over South Broadway. Has a huge like South by Southwest vibe. But I think that is like the marquee kind of Colorado festival, if I want to say. Because it's been here for it's been here for 20 years.
Sure.
And it has like such a huge community focus, and it prioritizes local talent in a way that you can discover it, and it's the barrier to entry as like a fan isn't that high, and you can discover so many cool bands, and like it's always a ridiculous time. Right. It's never not fun. Yeah, I miss that too.
Yeah. So do you ever travel outside of the state to cover any sort of music festivals or shows or anything like that?
Oh, as a fan, I followed my like favorite bands across state lines multiple times, various bands, and also just like experiencing music in different cities is cool. I went to this Red Bull underground function before I saw Radiohead in Detroit, and it was in a catacomb underground. Like, it was in a catacomb, and then they had like robots underneath there, and they all programmed music, as in they built all these contraptions and programmed them all to play. It was like being in a dollhouse. Almost.
And that was a Radiohead show?
No, this is before Radiohead show.
Okay.
It was put on by Red Bull. And it was just cool that someone could do something like that. And then like seeing Radiohead after that was just like mind blowing in the Little Caesars Arena. Seeing music in different places gives you like a whole different fan experience too.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like you already have that vacation buzz almost.
Yeah.
And then you're going to do this amazing thing like
a
Coachella or something like that. You know?
And it's interesting to see what people bring into different places. Like, I've gone to Coachella for the past 8 years, and it's always cool to see like how artists, because they know it's also a big promo opportunity, how they'll go above and beyond. You'll see a show there that you will probably not see anywhere else.
I built so many stupid custom sets for like Dr. Dre or whoever, you know, just like because it's Coachella.
Yeah, it's Coachella.
You know what I mean? It's like doing the Grammys or something almost. It's like you got to have your own vibe for your 20-minute set or whatever, however long it is, right? Yeah.
Cardi B had like a 30-minute set, full on pregnant, and had stripper poles, and just people just like.
Was she on a stripper pole?
She got
pregnant on a stripper pole.
She
really
legitimately did that.
Wow.
Yeah, but
that's crazy. She's a different animal for sure. So.
Oh gosh.
But yeah. So living here, I'm sure that you do some outdoor activities. What's your stick when you're outside? Are you like hiker, mountain biker?
I love to ski, and I do love to hike too, and that's kind of how like I did a little bit of photography out there. But I don't know, I go out to the outdoors a lot to kind of be more at peace with things. I'm not a big 14er guy. You won't see me on a mountain,
right?
Heights and then, whew. But like I don't know, I've almost felt less compelled during this pandemic because there's so many people out there, and it's just not the vibe I want. I'm trying to be with nature. Oh, I love to camp too.
Yeah,
but like I'm like trying to have like this nature experience and just kind of tune out.
There's so many people out there.
Yeah, and because I mean nothing's open, so it's like
right.
Let's hit the trail, and there's so many people, and so I'm just like, it's kind of turned me off a little bit to just like exploring the outdoors as I usually would.
Right.
Yeah, but snow sports are definitely my favorite.
I'm even the same way. Like living up here, we have access to so many different spots, but on the weekend, I find myself like, I don't want to go anywhere.
Yeah,
because there's so many freaking people. Yeah. Man, it is insane.
And you can see I-70.
Like parking lots are just hammered. And like last Friday, we took off and we went through South Park up to Breckenridge.
Yeah,
just me and the kids, and we spent the day up there and hung out, and we had a great time. But then we were coming back 285, and it was literally bumper to bumper traffic for like a good 60 miles probably. Mm-hmm. And it was just people going into the mountains. I was like,
the worst.
Oh my God, I'm so glad we're not going that way. And there's no way I would go that way on the weekend, you know? And I don't blame people for wanting to get out and do that. No, but, definitely not. You know, it's nobody's really fault, but it's just, there's so many people here, man. It's rough.
It's like the secret got out because like when I'm sure, as you know, growing up, it really wasn't that bad for like traffic or anything. And you could like have, I think it's also an Instagram thing and just social media, just like,
oh yeah,
I have to prove I was there. And as a photographer, I mean, like I can be guilty of the same thing, but I think it's a double-edged sword of like, okay, more word is getting out about these things in places, but now more people are coming in to see them. And it's just, it can just bog it down in a way that's just kind of,
well, just the impact on the environment, you know. Yeah. I see so many stupid things that we could avoid that people just do, and I think it's just miseducation, you know. And that's kind of the whole reason I started this podcast, was to help raise some awareness about that. And I kind of explained that in my email and stuff to you, but yeah, it's you know, just for example, like just people in a parking lot, right? Yeah. Just when they're getting to the destination, they're going to get there, the parking lot's going to be full, and you'll see them straight up just like driving and parking on the side of a hill or where they're not supposed to be, or in a field or or whatever, on you know. Yeah. So it's kind of crazy. So people got to kind of take that. I mean, you might make the drive and get someplace and the parking lot's full. Well, then you better have a plan B, because it's not worth trashing our environment.
And there's lesser known places that you can go. Like, you have the resources. You don't have to go to the most popular place to have the experience you want.
Exactly.
Like, there's a couple of trails like near, I think it's past Boulder. Oh no, it's near Estes Park, completely empty, and there's like waterfalls and whatnot. And there's like, that's the vibe I want.
Right.
Yeah, I went out to the paint mines just last on Sunday. That was beautiful, but there's like so many people even there at like 6 and 7 o'clock.
Right.
I'm like, Jesus. We were doing a photo shoot there too, obviously, because it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Nothing is really like it, but yeah, just the amount of people you see is.
But I get what you're saying by leaving your camera behind and stuff. Like, I started doing that with the kids. We used to, and I used to post a lot of that stuff. But between the podcast and just everything that's going on right now, I just don't feel like it's – I feel like it's taking away special time where it's like, here, go stand over here for the photo op. I think it's much better just to take it in sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
So I don't bring my camera really on trips. If we do something, like, we'll take maybe a photo of each other just, like, hanging out. But, like, I'm not going to be behind it the entire time at all by any means.
Yeah.
I think to really, like, have a great understanding of the outdoors is to really put yourself there and feel what it's like to just disconnect.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think there's an importance to that, and just, like, getting back and, like, having your focus and being susceptible to just, like, wanting that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and I think paying attention to what the actual rules are. You should know the rules before you go into a spot like that so we can preserve it, because I've seen so many people just beating off of a trail or just doing crazy stuff, you know, that shouldn't be happening.
I went to Lake Isabel and I saw a diaper behind a tree. I'm like, really? Like y'all couldn't bring a bag? Like, you had a baby.
Right.
I'm like, you could tie this up like it was a dog
or carry it out at least, you know. And
yeah, it was just
that's
like
another thing, pet peeve
there.
of mine, is the dog bags that like people bag their dog shit and leave it on the side of the trail.
People are reckless.
I've seen it in the middle of the woods, like, so I go into some wilderness areas because I'm a bow hunter and stuff like that, and just even doing some scouting, and like you'll be in the middle of nowhere and there'll be a sack of dog shit, and I'm like, how in the hell did this get here? And who thought it was a good idea to bag it and then put it back on the ground?
Yeah, like what? Might as well just like
what's
have
the
left
point?
it
Yeah,
as is.
You would have been better off just to leave it, right? Because then
Yeah.
it would have disintegrated.
And
Now it's in a plastic
and then
bag.
someone's gonna get into it. Like a bear may just jump and be like, "Oh, this is not it."
Right.
Yeah, no, I hate when people
Trash is the worst, though, for sure.
Trash like bothers me on a deep level, because it's just like it's something that you should prepare for, and everyone has a backpack or something. Like you can do better.
Somebody else brought up a really good point. I think it might have been Brent Gill. He's a comedian. He's like, and he was flying off the handle on it. He's like, because he always just dives off the deep end at something. And he was just going off. He's like, I know that they had a fucking backpack that the Snickers wrapper came in.
Yeah.
And they couldn't put it back in there, you know?
You know they have a Camelback and they could put their things
away. They carried it there.
Yeah. But then like I don't want to get dirty, but like you're on a trail. You're in dusty. Everything you have is dusty and busted. Like it could rain on you, like but you won't put your Snickers wrapper away. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that and the fire thing, too. Like, we got some serious fires going right now. Our last podcast was a firefighter, and he was kind of explaining some of the fire bans and stuff like that. So I think just people paying attention to that, just to educate yourself before you go camping and, you know, start a nice campfire to stay cozy or cook your s'mores, you know. Make sure that you can have one so you don't burn down everything.
Yeah, and be responsible. Like, I think people are just like, oh, I don't have to care when I'm in the outdoors. Like, nothing really can affect me.
Were your parents outdoors people, or did they grow up in Colorado, or did they kind of teach you some of those like ethics or
I was a
standards?
Boy Scout.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Yeah.
And my dad's really super outdoorsy, but
they kind of instilled that in you, right? And I feel like maybe sometimes that people that have moved here and don't have that, maybe they're from Philadelphia or New York City or wherever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not knocking any of that. I think anybody's welcome here. But I just don't think, like, I would have got my ass kicked if my grandfather or one of my uncles would have found out, like, I didn't have a dad growing up, but if they would have found out I left trash someplace on purpose, I would have been in deep shit.
It's like it's some of the most careless stuff. I know there's accidents that happen, like something the wind could pick up, and it's like, oh shit, I'm not gonna run through the forest. But it's like most of the time that's not happening, and it's just like sometimes people are just like so careless about that, and it's people that think someone else's job it is to clean up for them, and I hate that.
Yeah, there's the Park Service doesn't have the infrastructure. They barely have it to maintain trails, right? They're not going to be out there picking up trash and dog crap and that sort of thing. And I think that we can all help with that too. I know it's not your trash that you walk by sometimes, but if it's there and you have an easy way to pick it up, you know.
Yeah. I even
go
see
ahead.
it in the city.
It's weird with the whole COVID thing, like you know, there's masks laying on the ground, and I can get that. Like, maybe it fell out of their backpack. Maybe it fell out of their back pocket while they were walking. They didn't notice it, you know, but.
Maybe.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of times I've seen people, like, in the city, and, like, the city can be, like, dirtier in general, but, like, doesn't mean you have to contribute to that. I saw someone in the blacked out Mercedes just throw, like, a milkshake and all their, like, fast food out of the window into the street. And I was just like, you couldn't have waited to just find the trash can?
You can pull into any car wash, any gas station, and there's a free trash can for you to put shit in.
How pressed do you have to be to throw it out immediately?
Right.
You're probably going somewhere. You're probably going home. You're probably going to somewhere that has a trash can outside.
Right.
So I'm like, why wouldn't you just put it in the trash can, not throw it out the window? Like who raised you to do that? I hate seeing that. I almost wanted to like throw something at their car. I'm like, okay, you're gonna throw something on our streets of a city that you're supposed to care for, but here you are.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, the same rules should apply in a
Robbers.
city too. It doesn't matter if it's a park or a national park
Yeah.
or something like that. I think it's just common sense and
Yeah.
courtesy, right?
If you take pride in living here, and if
Yeah.
you take pride in actually being able to do these things, take pride in cleaning it up like you would your own house. You're not
Yeah.
gonna invite your friends over to your like $1 million mansion and be like, there's shit on the floor, and you're just like throwing your food on the floor. Like, like what
Right.
is that? Like, take pride in what you have and like what you're part of.
Yeah, we saw an unfortunate thing this week. Me and my son were actually going to a family member's house, and on the way over, we saw a baby bear that got hit. But it was like trash day, so everybody drug their trash cans down to the street, and then I'm sure that it was kind of a busy road. It's well, not busy. It's busy for the mountains, I guess. But it's a 35, 40 mile an hour speed limit right there, and I'm sure that the bear was after the trash, broad daylight, and it got hit.
Dang.
But yeah, so just be conscious of all that stuff.
Yeah.
We're kind of coming up on our time, but I really appreciate you coming in, man.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate your time, and we want to have you back, and especially when you're covering some sort of crazy story, or if you got something to tell us, please let us know.
Absolutely.
But can you tell people where they can find you if they want to reach out to you about a particular story, or maybe they're in a band that needs some management or something like that?
Of course. So my email would be, the best one to reach me at would be Kori.Hazel@303magazine.com. And my Instagram is like, a lot of people do reach out to me on that, and it's KOVOHO, Kovoho. Yeah, those are basically the main things I go through.
Awesome. And you have a website too, right?
Yeah, KoriHazel.com.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks again for coming in.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Jeremy, I wish you were here, but you're not. And everybody stay safe out there. Hey, we really appreciate our fan base and all of our listeners. And if you haven't done this already, please like, subscribe, follow, rate, comment wherever you catch the Mountainside Podcast. Also, if you'd like some information on upcoming events, safety tips, upcoming episodes, please check us out at themountainsidepodcast.com.